Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
You've read the books. You've learned the rules. You've played the games. And so is your mom. Just making sure you're paying attention. Now, it's time for something completely off base. From the same guys who haven't done anything exciting yet are the Paladins of Podcast, Rob and Potato. Listen in as they talk about all things related to pen and paper games, challenge rules, and go off script. This is the high fantasy commentary you didn't ask for, but your mom did. This is the Epic Table Audio Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Epic Table Games Audio Show. Today we have Potato, who has returned. Potato, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Took a sabbatical. Not really.
Yeah. You had some things go on, and it just made it a little hard to keep schedule. So Last week we had Zach fill in. It wasn't bad. Zach's still new. It was fun to have him on the show. It was fun to work with just him. So it was cool.
I'm glad that he's still on board with that and was able to come in last second. That's really good.
Absolutely.
All right, so this episode is going to be talking about some religion lore of RPGs, how you got all these gods, planes, and how the afterlife is, like factual. Everyone knows about it. Mm-hmm. And how our world and how we in real life would actually act in those exact circumstances.
Like how we would act if we knew exactly that there was an afterlife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like in D&D and Pathfinder and other RPGs, everything is factual. You actually have a measured space. You know the pantheon. You know how they are, what they do, and how to get in their favor.
Well, I maybe to a degree, I would think. I mean, in fact, not just both of our large tabletop RPG games, but in most tabletop fantasy setting games, you have a multitude of gods.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, in real life, we have a multitude of gods, exactly. Essentially. We have Greek gods, etc. And I think that when you open up to a point where you have many gods, not everybody knows enough about the other deities in order to really get into some of their favor. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I mean...
Oh, yeah. It was like the same things I was thinking about when I was reading this. This whole topic kind of sprung up on a Reddit post I stumbled on. And this guy brings up how there's a philosophy in our real life called meta-atheism.
Okay.
How no one really believes in their heart of hearts their religion because the way they act in a funeral. Instead of grieving and feeling obliterated by the sadness, they should be happy knowing that their loved one is going on a crazy holiday, basically. Like, he's going on to heaven. Oh, he's going to have so much good time there. Can't wait to meet him. Instead of grieving so harshly, this guy says.
Well, I think in real life, this is kind of a heavy topic we're starting off on, but I think in real life, the process for most people, that grieving is the grieving of loss.
Yep.
And it's regardless of where they're going, you can be happy that they're there and happy that they are moving towards that direction, but it also means that you can't just turn around and give them a hug or call them or see them.
Yeah, it's because they're not there in your physical space now.
Right, and that's hard for a lot of people.
It is.
In fact, I look at a lot of different things when it turns to religious aspects, and what I find that a lot of people seem to have a difficult time with is the complete and utter lack of existence. Their own mortality and other people around them, it's the all of a sudden pure absence of the individual in your life. And to a degree, I think this guy makes sense. I mean, you'd be happy that they're in a better place, or they have reached nirvana, or they're in heaven with all of their needs and desires and everything met. Now that's the good side, of course. If you know that they're going to a bad or worse off place, I could definitely see you being upset about their passing.
Exactly. I want to bring that up too, because especially in RPG, there's all these different afterlives.
Yeah.
It could be good or bad. So I feel you'd be more worried they're going to the bad afterlife. I guess in the weirdest, vaguest way to put it. I never said bad afterlife before in my life, but they'd be more worried about that in the bad place, the naughty zone.
Well, I think in most games, if you actually really look at it, and this is funny too because I just recently picked up for Pathfinder the Book of the Damned.
Oh yeah,
I did, and the book is really the initial collection of all of the ins and outs of the not so nice of the afterlife. Really?
Is it like the infernal plane or the abyss?
So each of them have their own plane, and it talks about it, and hell has 7 or 9 different levels.
Right.
I mean, we have the abyss or the void or the astral plane, which is kind of like a neutral zone, but
yeah, I think astral plane is like purgatory, essentially.
And then I mean, you have your hells, you have the whole deal. And on the flip side, the good place, most people are familiar with Elysium.
Yep.
Other than that, they don't really stray too far, so you're way more likely to get categorized into going to some form of hellish environment than you are to go to a positive environment.
Right. Not to mention that in the transition of like your soul departing your mortal coil and going to another plane could get snatched by like an astrodaemon or something like that.
Yeah.
And I feel in a setting where all this magic and all this planar activity is known to us, that would be something that you can't even protect yourself with. You can't be like, oh, he's dead. We got to hurry up and put a protection on his soul so no one can snatch him on his way to Elysium.
Right.
It'll be very tough. And that brings me to another point.
Okay.
This guy brings up this whole thing about how everything is known, everything is measured, and how our world will act so differently if this was the case for us.
Oh.
But let me tell you something here, though.
Okay.
On the character sheet for Pathfinder, the knowledge checks, like knowledge, religion, and whatnot, that has to be trained. You cannot roll that normally, can you?
No, it does have to be trained. And that's common. I mean, that's really some leftover bits from 3rd edition and 3.5.
And if I remember correctly, a +0 modifier, a score of 10 in any ability makes you a normal average person, correct?
In the ability score?
Yes.
I think it actually depends on what rule set you're looking at.
Oh, okay.
A lot of them say 8. Some say 9.
So that'd be what, -1, -2?
Ish.
So an average commoner, let's just say he's at 10, so a +0, nothing to add on if you need to do a knowledge check. Can't do a knowledge check on religion if he's not trained. So are you telling me that in the world of Galarian, in the world of Faerun from D&D, that the commoners, the regular average folk, not the adventurers, not the clerics, not the scholars, would they actually know as much as we the players know? It's not like the people of Galarian have the CRB in their pockets.
How'd you say D&D's world?
Faerun. Did I say that wrong? I don't play D&D. Is it Faerun?
I've always said Faerun.
Faerun? I don't know.
Faerun.
Whatever it is. Was it the material plane of Aber or Toril? I don't remember the lore too much. Again, I don't play D&D.
I don't know.
If I butchered it, I apologize.
So I was actually really distracted thinking about how you pronounce the name, so you're gonna have to kind of give me a recap. I'm sorry.
So all these commoners that
that's right.
Yeah, no knowledge, no knowledge trained. They don't have the core rule book in their pocket. How would they know these religions, these astral planes, these afterlives? They're just going off of what the church tells them.
Well, let's
just like in our world.
Let's translate slightly a little bit of I guess our world to our fantasy worlds here. First of all, mechanically, the skill check allows you to make a knowledge check based on what you know about certain aspects.
Right.
So think of it more like an in-depth knowledge versus surface knowledge. Like you don't have to roll about surface knowledge. For example, you probably haven't studied Hinduism in depth.
No.
You probably don't know all of the ins and outs, but you know that Hinduism is multi-theistical, has many gods. It's got a reincarnation process.
The elephant guy is super cool looking.
Ganesha. But that's what I'm saying is here in the real world, you have at least a surface knowledge. So if you were to have a 10 stat for average, that essentially means that you cannot roll in-depth knowledge because you simply don't know. Right. You haven't heard anywhere. But you do have enough basic knowledge to understand a little bit.
And that's only going off of what you've heard as you were being raised.
Or
from
read.
People around you, or read, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I feel it's not a far stretch to make it so similar to our world. I feel, realistically, it's basically the same thing. The fact that we are outside players looking into the core rule set, that's what makes it feel like there's a disconnect.
Well,
like, how would you not know? Well, it's just how the world is.
Well, I also think that a big part of it, like you said, is players looking in. You also have to look at the fact that a lot of times in these games, characters don't generally die and stay dead.
Right. You got spells like talking with the dead. You can resurrect. You can, reincarnate, so you can be like a different race even.
Mm-hmm.
You got all these different crazy things that can happen. In our world, it's not proven that it can happen. People say that it has happened.
Right.
So I feel that, too, is pretty much the same thing. You're just going off of what has been claimed.
Sure.
But yeah, again, you still are a cleric who can be like, oh, yeah, I can talk to this dead guy. I mean, watch.
Yeah. I mean, and truthfully, there are evil necromancy in the world where they raise dead bodies and skeletons, etc. They're mindless zombies. So I think a part of it is the case that he's making is that a form of afterlife, by any means, is guaranteed.
Right.
Whereas in the real world, any form of afterlife is not guaranteed. And I'm trying to make sure I'm still following here, is that his case is realistically not everybody would know that it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
And I can see that. I can agree with that. You can definitely make a case that every single individual has a faith so strong that they believe in whatever deity they believe in, and they will go to a place in the afterlife that's acceptable enough for them. You can make that case. But then everybody is super religious and fanatical, and there are some people who just simply don't believe in deities.
Yep.
But then again, pulling from Wizards of the Coast's lore when they designed Dungeons and Dragons, there are individuals who usurped. I said that wrong. It's late already here.
Usurped?
That's one way to say it, too. Anyway, who overthrew deities to ascend themselves, so they know it's possible for mortals to somehow become gods.
Yeah.
Gods.
But again, that could be just a claim. That just could be a story.
I could definitely say that outside of a certain region, it can definitely more be story. Mm-hmm. But those people who have experienced and seen it obviously know.
He was my best friend. Now he's a god. I know this is true.
Right. And seeing those things, I guess bringing it back to the idea of Greek gods, I mean, they felt that the Greek gods were real people, real gods, fallible in all ways, and they just lived out of sight and they only influenced the mortal world.
Right.
Ultimately, that's very similar to what our tabletop RPG deities do.
Very much so. I feel a lot of the inspiration is from the Greek mythology because of how personal the gods were to the mortal world.
That, and I think a big part of it is because of the massive amounts of races that have been generated. I mean, not everybody's going to worship the same individual.
Right.
And honestly, in the multi-theistical worlds that they've developed, they've given characteristics to each of their gods, each deity. And these characteristics follow over into their followers, etc. And I mean, sure, there are zealots everywhere and whatnot, but ultimately, I think it is plausible that a majority of individuals within the world setting lore would not know exactly what happens in afterlife. I mean, really thinking about it, actually, common farmers, I mean, they probably are just pretty set when you die, and you hope for the best. Like, they don't know that.
How much you want to bet in a realistic setting of any of these RPG worlds that common farmer would not know the difference between a cleric, a sorcerer, and a wizard? You just see a couple of guys in robes who are making weird things with their hands.
Well, maybe a cleric I could see because he's pretty holy.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends. Okay, yeah,
you know, I mean, clerics and paladins I could see
usually hold their holy symbol right there on their chest. That's a good point too. Would you know exactly what god that they're wearing by looking at their symbol?
No, and I think that's reflected in the fact that your knowledge religion check needs to be trained.
Exactly.
Again, though, I mean, you know that there's multiple gods out there. You may have heard of their specific deity, but you're not familiar with it, and that represents the lack of trained knowledge. I think realistically, though, having trained in such broad strokes like knowledge religion is kind of a way to shortchange it, but streamline it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta give it a simplified mechanic because it's still, in its base form, a game.
Right. And I mean, you really don't want to, I'll use real world examples here. You don't want to max out like knowledge Christianity and have no ranks in Buddhism or Hinduism or Judaism, etc. And then you still, let's say you do max out that one specific niche, then again, you still are missing all of the subfacets of that niche. So you have to streamline it by generalizing it. And I guess it's up to the players who really decide how far they want to take that.
That brings me up to a good point too, because would that be a maybe like a profession that you can lean into? Is that a thing in the game? Where you it's like a specialized knowledge that's leaning from the religion?
You know, if a character brought that aspect to me, I think I would work a way to allow something like that.
Yeah, that's a neat idea.
For instance, if they decided to take profession clergyman and had knowledge religion, sure, I would allow maybe like a +2 synergy bonus there because he has an in-depth knowledge.
Because this is specific to what I trained in, not the broad strokes of the general rank.
Right. And I think that's fair. I think as a dungeon master, it's very important to be able to allow characters to fully flesh out and develop their characters.
Yeah.
Allowing your player to look for those synergistic bonuses based on story is super important as it is.
Oh, yeah.
But again, bringing it back to the question, and I want to make sure that we didn't get too far off base here, but we're looking at if we were to make the rule set more realistic, right? For the afterworld. Yeah, so gosh. Dead space. You got to think a little quicker.
Dead space. Yeah. I'm tired, man.
No, it happens.
Let's see. So, what the guy brought up was more about the society factor of how the game's religion and whatnot would be influenced if it was our real world. I think he brought up a little topic. Hold on, not a little topic. He brought up a spot where, kind of like a prison, you have a group of individuals who are there to like watch over and protect everyone from basically being sent to a bad afterlife.
Okay.
And how it'd be so important for someone to be locked in place and know where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And how the whole world in real life would be more mindful and organized in their alignment. Like, oh, Billy, I noticed he's been acting a lot more lawful. He's my good friend. I want to make sure I'm in the same afterlife as him, so I'm going to act a bit more lawful. But what about my friend Jenny? She's acting a bit chaotic. She's not going to follow us. She's another good friend. I want her to follow us. So I feel that brings up a good topic, kind of like how, like you said earlier, fanatics.
Mm-hmm.
It will definitely become fanatical easily, I feel, if people want to basically be in the same afterlife with each other.
Well, if we look at real world examples, there are plenty of aspects that can translate here, and I think what ends up happening is self-balance in the middle of the road.
Right.
Which really leaves, in game terms, neutral.
Yeah.
And there are
neutral.
Plenty of people who kind of oversee neutral. I mean, sure, you have your neutral evil, your neutral good, your true neutral. And not every single one of them has a afterlife domain. They all end up in one of the few or one of the many afterlives there are.
Right. Yeah. You know what? That does bring up a good point. Like, there's 9 alignment types in like D&D Pathfinder.
Yep.
And there's 9 afterlives per alignment section.
Well, essentially, there's, I mean, I guess you could say 3. There's the bland astral plane, where kind of like purgatory.
Right.
There's your heavens, and there's your hells.
Yeah.
I mean, each group has a few different planes in them, and I'm not sure if you've seen the planar maps. Are you familiar with those?
Ooh, that's something that I probably should have looked up before we started this episode, but I feel like I remember, but I could be remembering D&D, not Pathfinder.
Yeah, I don't remember right offhand what the Pathfinder planar map looks like.
Because it is like the diagram of spheres and stuff, correct?
D&D's is.
Oh, okay. See, I was right. I was thinking about that one.
Yeah, so you're probably a little bit more familiar with something like this one here. And,
oh, yeah.
And so people can't see the map here, but it is split up into 4 quadrants: your good, lawful, evil, and chaotic. And as you notice that you have lawful, but you don't have neutral, but you do have chaotic. So neutral is somewhere in the middle, and then good and evil. That's obviously, right there. So neutral somewhere has to sort of squeeze somewhere between all those.
And that's the thing. In real life, if that's the diagram that everyone's like, this is truth, this is fact, we've measured it, this is undeniable information here. You know how much stress a person will have to go through? Like, okay, so where am I falling into? Where am I going to go when I die? Where am I in this diagram?
Right. Right. So, let's zoom in on this so we can talk a little bit more. It's hard to see.
Oh, yeah. Then you got like the elemental planes. They're also in between all of that. I forgot about the elemental planes.
Your elemental planes are within the outer planes.
Right.
So, in your good quadrant, especially, again, we're looking at D&D here. You have your Bitopia, Elysium, the Beastlands, and then you start to get more into the chaotic realms as you go, like from Limbo, Arborea and Ysgard, Limbo, Pandemonium, the Abyss, and then right at the Abyss is where you start to transfer into the evil planes. Carceri, Hades, Gaina, the 9 Hells, and then we start to transfer into lawful, Archon, Mechanus, which Mechanus is really cool. That's where most of your Warforged come from in D&D. In fact, I played a few games that took place in Mechanus. It was really neat. Arcadia, Mount Celestia.
Arcadia is like the magic, right? Or am I wrong?
Honestly, I don't remember right offhand. But that is the Dungeons and Dragons planes, and the heavens and hells are your outer planes, and then you still have the outlands, and you have things beyond that in general. But everything,
it's crazy that they even thought of beyond that border. There's other things happening. Well, things beyond recognition.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would just like to say that a lot of people are familiar with the Abyss.
Right.
I mean, I would assume that when you hear about monsters that go bump in the night and things that scare the heck out of children and the boogeyman, etc., I could see people saying, "Oh, that's from the Abyss.
Right.
It's from the Great Abyss.
From the darkness."
Yeah.
Right.
I'll use the Nothing from Never Ending Story.
Oh God, I love that movie.
I mean, seriously,
the Nothing would be something you just cannot fight against, man.
Right, and likely comes from the Abyss.
Right.
And those things right there are at least solid foundation and concrete in enough people's minds that I could see that they know and they can gauge where they're going to end up if you use the Abyss is what we're talking about. So if you use the Abyss as your gauge,
right?
I mean, it's either I'm going there, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not going there.
Maybe the Abyss is the middle of the road, and there's a place worse, and there's a place better, and I don't want to end up here.
Yeah.
So it depends on, as you said, what they know for their knowledge, what they know for their religion, and how they act. Because we have known that both real world and fantasy games, that a person, a character, player, their personality types and what they do helps define kind of where they go.
Exactly.
In the end,
there's always a consequence.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to play middle of the road, you end up middle of the road. Kind of boring, but it is what it is. And I guess the idea that if we had everybody in the fantasy realm kind of have that concrete knowledge, which I don't play, or I don't really oversee many games that have such a strong religious presence, because people don't tend to just run around screaming their religion.
Yeah, that's true. Even today's age, no one really is walking around exclaiming what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a time...
Oh, hello, I'm James. I'm Methodist. Oh, hello over there. I'm Methodist.
Right. And I mean...
Oh, hi, I'm Baptist.
In certain settings, I'm sure it goes down.
Not in my lifetime.
But as it stands for in-game, it's not really a thing that people jump up and down and reveal.
Right.
You don't just be like, oh,
it's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
It is.
And I think playing it that way, and I do that in specific ways, particularly because, I generally play with people who are of a multitude of different religions. So it is absolutely paramount that we don't upset, piss off, or irritate anybody at the table because religion swings one way or another.
Exactly.
Most people can separate how they personally feel from their character's religion, and that's acceptable, that works. But there are some people who get involved enough and have enough of a commitment to their character's religion that you don't want to essentially demonize or conflict with their religion because it's offensive, and we try not to be offensive.
Have you ever had a game where someone's player character's beliefs or what they've done because of their beliefs offended a player?
Yeah, I think I have, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so...
That'd be nuts. Like, hey, that's not me that said it. That was my character.
Right, and so I've got a history of being semi-abrasive. And I had a character at one point who really just didn't care about a majority of other deities.
Oh.
And he was always talking down about deities, and his character story was he kind of rolled through a lot of them. He was like, they just didn't work out for me. I had to keep finding ones that did.
Oh, really? So he's like a religion hopper?
Yeah, kind of like Madonna. And he would say things, and the conversations would come up. I think he was a bard, but the cleric hated him, the paladin hated him.
Wow.
And the characters hated him because the players didn't like my character. And then on top of that, it also started causing issues between those players and me outside of game.
Oh.
So, yeah, it can definitely happen because the way that they view it, and I think I've mentioned it once before on our episodes, is that there are two types of characters most people play.
Right.
Those who they either aspire to be or exemplified versions of who they think they are.
Right.
You know, that's generally the two types of characters people play. And I think that the characters who got mad at me were trying to play exemplified versions of themselves. And I wasn't. I was just going with the flow. I used to be a big shenanigans player.
Used to be.
Yeah, you're right. I still have some shenanigans. But the bard that I'm talking about was friendly, schmoozed everybody, very charismatic, and then without skipping a beat, like it was a matter of fact, he would slander somebody's god, and he just didn't even think twice about it, you know. And yeah, it can irritate people. He knew, that character knew about the afterlife. I mean, he had actually experienced the afterlife.
Oh, okay.
On multiple occasions, if I remember correctly, and how it rolled through in the game. And the rest of the world didn't quite understand the concept of concrete afterlife. Because really, I mean, not knowing as much lore, in the lore of D&D, have you heard of the Wall of Souls?
I have not.
All right, so the Wall of Souls is where horrible people go and their souls are stuck in this wall.
Cool.
And they usually cannot escape or be freed. And they are left to be in the wall forever. Ever, ever, and ever.
Wow.
That's end of story. Suffer in the wall forever. With all these other souls, just like you, stuck.
Stop touching me!
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an interesting concept and idea, but one of the things that this bard I'm talking about ended up happening to him is he ended up in the stupid wall.
But he got out?
Yeah, somebody wished him out.
Wish. That does it. That'll do it right there.
Yep. Here we go. Here's some Forgotten Realms stuff when we were talking about the journey from life to death. When ensouled mortals of the prime material plane, so generally Earth, you're on prime material,
right?
Which is different than the material plane by all rights, die under normal conditions or circumstances, their souls depart their bodies, and they're pulled to the fugue plane. The journey was not instantaneous, although it would seem that way to the soul itself. Some argue the journey could take as long as 3 days to even a month of time on the prime plane. So if you know that religion, if you follow that religion, definitely your bag of tea. But not familiar with it, most people don't know. But again, this is just afterlife. When it talks about afterlife in Forgotten Realms, and again, lost souls, fugue plane. Its soul resides in waiting, wandering about aimlessly, unaware that it's even died, until it's retrieved by a representative of one of the powers. So,
okay.
So now that we have a little bit of this information, and we continue to look at the comparison of if they all know, sure. I mean, they have a purgatory where they just sort of wait. They're not even aware that they're dead yet. They're just all of a sudden like, whoa, blank slate, what the heck?
Right.
And then somebody comes down and gets them, which would probably be somebody that they believed in or were closely tied to.
Someone they could trust, or else they want to follow that guy.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I could also see.
sense.
I could also see, like, you know what? You followed deity ABC, but you really acted like a huge jerk, and deity XYZ is claiming your soul, buddy.
I was about to say that XYZ is getting you.
Right. Which could be cool and everything too. In fact, I also think it's one of those things that, for example, in our soon to be released side quests, your father, Albrin.
Yep, Albrin.
Father Albrin died.
Yes.
and so the results of this death, which
spoilers.
It's okay. It's not a huge deal.
No one's gonna listen to it. Like, my favorite character, Father Albrin, died. Ugh.
Right. It's gonna be 3 episodes in when it happened. By the way,
it's a world record in my book. I mean,
so we're gonna break it down. You had knowledge religion.
Yep.
So when you ended up in the astral plane, that happened because 2 interdimensional spaces intersected, and you blink to the astral plane. You didn't die.
No, I wasn't dead.
But you went to the astral plane. And Pathfinder, astral plane, Pharasma. So I gave you all of the key ingredients when you made your knowledge religion check to know that it was Pharasma. And you played your character how you say was committed to the character's essence himself.
Yeah.
You still stand by that?
I still do. He when you listen to the episode, you'd be like, why did he pull a Karen move? Which he definitely did.
Absolutely. But without...
Let me speak to your manager.
Without telling you it was Pharasma, did you know
that the person that he talked to was Pharasma?
Yeah.
Me, the player, honestly did not know.
Okay.
Be brutally honest, because of the description and whatnot and the jokes that are made, my mindset was in the thought process of this is the middleman, the clerk to Pharasma.
Okay.
So yeah, Father Albrin's like, oh, guess what, lady? I'm going to intimidate you. Well, they're pretty good at intimidate, actually. Let me speak to Pharasma. And come to find out, oh, you are Pharasma. Oh, no.
Right.
I should have intimidated a god. She was so intimidated. Guys, you gotta listen to this. She was so intimidated that she sent Father Albrin to hell. She's like, oh my god, you're so scary. Bye.
I don't think that's how it worked out.
No, it's not.
But I mean, if you want to spin that story, just wait till you hear the episodes. Anyhow, once you knew it was Pharasma herself, you still stood by the fact that he probably would have intimidated her.
He probably would have. He probably wouldn't have said what he said, but he probably would have still intimidated her to try to get out of the plane.
Right.
Because he felt he was above being stuck in the astral plane. He's like, this is, intolerable. Mm-hmm. I'm alive. I'm not dead. I don't belong here.
Right. So we look at it, and now you know enough of lore where if you're not dead and gone and your character sheet is like destroyed somewhere, you can be found. You can be brought back, etc. And you didn't really roll him that way.
No.
You just kind of said, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to go in and I'm going to piss off some people. And we're going to see what happens. So you ended up from the astral plane in an intimidation check with a real big Karen move, like you said, ended up in hell.
Yep.
And now I don't want to talk about what comes next because... That's
definitely spoilers.
That's still hidden behind the curtain.
Yeah.
But you rolled up another character, etc., and we're going to debut him this next game.
Yep.
But knowing everything you knew and knowing how things played out, the only thing you would change is just the intimidate check.
Yeah, I think in Father Albrin's shoes, his mindset was that he was too powerful, too destined by Saren Ray to be basically, like, I guess you would say embarrassingly stuck in the astral plane. He's like, I will find my way out of here if I gotta kill some people or raise a smite Bible on you.
so looking at this again, I mean, he was a passionate zealot follower of Saren Ray.
Oh, yes.
And he didn't once call for huge help.
Like from Serenray?
Yeah.
Or... No, you know what? You did bring up a good point there. I wasn't thinking, oh, I should call out to Serenray. Maybe she'll help me. He was thinking, I will get myself out of here because I'm strong that way.
So really, playing your character, because you had said when he first started that you didn't quite play him how you imagined him.
True. First couple episodes, I feel like I didn't have the time and the moments to say and do what I wanted to do.
But yet, in the end, he died by hubris.
Yep, and arrogance, which was true to form because I wanted him to be that arrogant son of a bitch, you know.
So at the apex of your character, at the crucial moment, you're like, we are gonna go all the way, and you did.
Yeah.
And you did. I mean, sure, you played your character. You knew that there was an afterlife. You knew there was a death possibility. You were like, I'm going to totally go to Elysium. Not a big deal. Woohoo, let's rock and roll.
Right.
And you were like, yeah, we're totally positive people. But because of how things roll out in story form, as well as the possibility of the fact that somebody is actually judging you based on your deeds, etc.
Right.
When you died, which technically you still didn't die.
Yeah. That's true. I didn't die in the mechanical form.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You were just sent to hell. And these are physical places. So we still look at the idea of Greek gods, where Hades is still the underworld and Mount Olympus is the top and gods live there, etc. So you went to God's planes. You ended up in hell. You ended up on the 3rd or 4th level. And physical place where mortals can go and travel to. I think that's what it is, really. I think that we look at the concrete evidence of afterlife because of the fact that mortals can travel, and there are stories of mortals traveling to these other planes.
True.
That is the entire crutch of the anti-argument for this guy.
Yeah, it really is.
Because heroes go to these other planes, and even though the stories may not be widespread, I would say in a majority of DM homebrew worlds, as well as a majority of the rules and adventure modules and character paths and organized play and all the lore, it's widespread knowledge that people go to certain afterlives and come back.
Right. But yet again, they'll have to be the adventurers, the heroes, the legendary, exceptional people, not your common farmer.
But if they go, I mean, you would be like, oh man, there's definitely a place to go, and I don't want to go to hell. So maybe that does influence it.
Yeah.
And maybe that is the concrete evidence that the argument makes against his case is that, oh, well, you know what? I know because they've traveled to a physical place. There's artifacts from a physical place. Right. Portals have opened up and shit has come through that place.
Dude, look what he got from the souvenir shop from Hades.
Right.
Look at that.
Absolutely. So honestly, now
it's a t-shirt, I heart Hades.
The place, not the man.
Right. I went to hell and all I got was a freaking coffee mug.
I vacay in hell. So, but I mean, we look at the lore, and I think that the fact is that we took the article seriously, and we understand the assignment there.
Yeah.
It's that in the real world, what we have is a lack of certainty. But I think they've proven in RPGs, fantasy settings with multiple deities, is that they've proven deities exist.
Yeah.
In fact, there are physical manifestations of deities.
Right.
They have been on Earth. They have walked with common folk. They have done the deeds, and while a lot of them have thrown up their hands and say, I don't care anymore, there are still plenty of them who influence and speak to plenty of their followers.
Well, heck, even in Galarian's lore, the World Wound, that's an actual place of nothing but war and chaos with the demons and stuff.
Yeah.
So you really can't say, oh, that's just a story, that's just a claim. That's an actual location. You could walk there.
Right.
And die.
Right. And then now as we continue to explore this idea, I think the people who are unsure, like, I don't know if there's really an afterlife, I would consider them to actually be actively ignorant on purpose.
Yeah. In a crazy fantasy setting like Galarian and Faerun. You would have to be ignorant and blissfully blind to what's going on around you.
Yeah, and I think that while it may not be truly spoken about, it's absolutely certain that when they die, they feel like they're going to go somewhere.
It's like an unspoken agreement.
It must be something like that. And I mean, at first, as we were talking, I really did think that it was a great line. I mean, in fact, thinking about when we started our episode, we kind of made a great case for sure. It's playing it realistically, but now as we've talked, I think I've changed my opinion. I think the way it's set is that they do know that there's a place because they've provided undoubtable proof about such place.
It kind of, I guess the whole thing really hinges on the table, on the players, on the DM, and how they're going to role play that out, because if no one says anything about it, then just like what we just said, you're blissfully blinded to the world's lore and its pantheons and multi-theiscal religions and whatnot. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I definitely agree. 180 turn.
Absolutely. And I mean, it sucks that we talked ourselves out of such a great argument, but I mean, honestly, I think it's an evolution of both the way we play and how we see things go on in these fantasy worlds.
So after this discussion, are you going to DM a bit differently? Are you going to keep this in mind and try to have more of this world knowledge and part of your campaign?
No.
Well,
the reason I say no is very simply because good versus evil is a pretty common trope.
Yeah.
And
classic.
It's always
tale as old as time.
It's always there in every game. Good versus evil. And I think giving every character a religious tone it's setting up for a specific game. And
True.
I want a fantasy game. It doesn't have to be a religious game.
True.
You know, people can argue, hey, when you open up the gates of hell, it's instantly religious. You know, I mean, come on, it doesn't have to be.
Well, that just leans into what you're doing there in the first place. Like,
right.
Why did it open up? Why are you there?
Right.
Is it because you had to retrieve an item, or is it because you had to save a deity? You know.
Right.
Because I remember one campaign. I didn't play it or anything, but there's one campaign where half of the good deities were just disappeared,
mm-hmm.
and you had to figure out what happened to them, and you had to. This was a Rovagug, the really bad evil necromancy like demon guy, the really bad evil dude. He like kidnapped a couple of the gods and this and that. So that makes it a bit religious. Because you're investigating and being hands-on with these deities. Can't remember why you, being like level 5 at the time, I can't remember, but
I don't even know.
But yeah, it just depends on how you're playing, how your campaign is. It doesn't have to be religious. Religion in the real life is controversial and diverse and a very personal topic as it is. It doesn't have to be in your game.
Right.
It doesn't have to be.
Completely agree. So, all right. Well, you know what? Let's wrap it up here. And thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to check us out online at epictablegames.com, on Facebook, and our Facebook group, both Epic Table Games.
Epic Table Games!
See you.
Epic Table Games! Epic Table Games! Nice, roll, nice, fantastical, nice, fairy tales, dragons, quest, nice, roll. Audio show with the paladins of the podcast, Rob and Potato. Until next time, stay in touch on Facebook at Epic Table Games and online at epictablegames.com. Yeah.